Imagine this. You're enjoying a peaceful day at the zoo, marveling at the lions and tigers, when suddenly, a T-Rex crashes through the fence, roaring loud enough to shatter your eardrums. Welcome to the chaos of Jurassic Park, except this time, it's real. What if the dream, or nightmare, of bringing dinosaurs back to life wasn't just a blockbuster movie, but an actual scientific achievement? What if we opened the gates to a world where velociraptors roamed free, pterodactyls soared above skyscrapers, and brunch included dodging a pack of hungry compsognathus? I'm your host, and this is What If Horizons, where we explore the wildest possibilities of science, technology, and the human imagination. Let's dive in. The idea of Jurassic Park becoming a reality isn't just the stuff of Hollywood fantasy, it's a scientific debate that's been simmering for decades. Thanks to advances in genetic engineering, the concept of resurrecting extinct species, known as de-extinction, is no longer completely far-fetched. Scientists have already mapped the genomes of woolly mammoths and passenger pigeons, and while dinosaurs are a bit trickier, DNA doesn't last 65 million years, there are some creative workarounds. For instance, researchers have suggested modifying the DNA of modern birds, the closest living relatives of dinosaurs, to create something resembling a velociraptor. Sounds like a great idea, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, let's start with the obvious. Dinosaurs were not exactly cuddly creatures. These were apex predators with teeth the size of bananas and claws sharper than your kitchen knives. Picture this. You're on a safari tour, snapping photos of a triceratops, when suddenly, a pack of raptors decides you look like a tasty snack. Your tour guide, armed with nothing but a whistle and a clipboard, is suddenly the least prepared person on the planet. And let's not forget the logistics. Where do you even put a T-Rex? A standard zoo enclosure isn't going to cut it. You'd need a fortress, complete with electrified fences, reinforced concrete walls, and maybe a moat filled with sharks, because why not add more predators to the mix? Then there's the ethical dilemma. Sure, bringing back dinosaurs sounds cool, but what about the consequences? These creatures evolved in a world vastly different from ours. The climate, the ecosystems, the food chains, none of it matches their prehistoric environment. You can't just drop a stegosaurus into a modern forest and expect it to thrive. And what about the existing wildlife? How would lions and tigers react to sharing their territory with a creature that makes them look like house cats? Spoiler alert, not well. And let's talk about the human factor. Jurassic Park, in theory, would be a massive tourist attraction. People would flock from all over the world to see a living, breathing dinosaur. But let's be real, humans are not exactly known for following rules. Someone would inevitably try to pet a T-Rex for a selfie, or worse, smuggle a baby velociraptor out in their backpack. And then there's the question of who gets to run this park. Would it be a government project? A private corporation? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that mixing profit motives with dangerous science rarely ends well. But let's say, for a moment, that we somehow manage to overcome all these challenges. Jurassic Park becomes a reality, and everything runs smoothly, at least for a while. What then? Do we stop at dinosaurs? What about other extinct species? Saber-toothed tigers, giant ground sloths, dodo birds. The possibilities are endless, but so are the risks. And let's not forget the ultimate question. Just because we can, does that mean we should? Is playing God with nature a brilliant scientific achievement? Or a disaster waiting to happen? Now let's talk about the most overlooked problem in this dinosaur-filled utopia, infrastructure. Modern roads weren't designed for creatures that weigh as much as garbage trucks and have a habit of sitting wherever they please. Picture rush hour traffic with an apatosaurus casually blocking the interstate because it found a particularly tasty patch of shrubs in the median. The term, road rage, takes on terrifying new meaning when the angry driver in question is a 30-foot carnivore slamming its tail into your Honda Civic. The construction industry would need complete overhauls to build dinosaur-proof cities. Your typical 3-bedroom suburban home might look delicious to a hungry Allosaurus. Concrete foundations, more like all-you-can-eat mineral buffets for herds of ankylosaurs. And don't even get me started on public parks. That pleasant afternoon picnic could become an extreme sport when flocks of pterodons develop a taste for potato salad. Public utilities would face unprecedented challenges. Power lines would need to be either buried or built at unreachable heights, unless we want blackouts every time a brachiosaurus stretches its neck. Water treatment plants would need to process amounts of dinosaur waste that make current sewage systems look quaint. Imagine explaining to taxpayers why their water bills tripled to accommodate the bathroom habits of creatures that poop in quantities measured in dump truck loads. The transportation sector would need radical innovations. Commercial airlines already hate dealing with regular birds. Now imagine an airspace crowded with winged reptiles the size of small planes. Subway systems would become underground buffets for burrowing dinosaurs. And that little hybrid you're so proud of. Its excellent gas mileage won't mean much when a Carnotaur is using it as a chew toy in the parking lot. Even basic services would struggle to adapt. Mail carriers would demand hazard pay for dodging territorial raptors in every cul-de-sac. Pizza delivery would require armored vehicles. That neighborhood watch program suddenly looks inadequate when what you really need is a heavily armed rapid response team trained in dinosaur deterrence. Home security systems would become obsolete overnight. Motion sensors, constantly triggered. Alarm systems, always blaring. That ADT sign on your lawn might scare off burglars, but it's not going to impress a curious stegosaurus who wants to see what your living room tastes like. Survivalists who stockpiled guns for the apocalypse would discover their rifle just makes the T-Rex angry before it eats them. Schools would need to radically redesign recess policies. Dodgeball gets significantly more intense when there's a non-zero chance of actual predation. Those walking school buses of kids going to class in groups would suddenly make evolutionary sense again. And good luck getting kids to focus on algebra when there's a pack of Compsognathus nesting in the playground. The insurance industry would collapse under the weight of dinosaur-related claims. Homeowners' policies would need new categories for stomped by sauropod coverage. Car insurance rates would skyrocket once they calculate the frequency of Triceratops vehicle collisions. And good luck finding someone to underwrite your ranch destroyed by escaped Pyroraptor claim, because yes, scientists probably would try making fire-breathing varieties eventually. Local governments would go bankrupt trying to adapt. Property taxes couldn't possibly cover the cost of dinosaur-proofing entire communities. Zoning laws would be rewritten daily to keep up with newly discovered dino behaviors. And that small-town mayor who campaigned on fixing potholes, suddenly they're facing re-election based on how well they handled the Ceratosaurus migration through Main Street. The economic impact of living dinosaurs would make the Great Depression look like a minor market correction. Let's start with tourism, the supposed benefit of Jurassic Park. Sure, people would flock to see real dinosaurs, but at what cost? Theme park tickets would need to cover not just the attractions, but also the constant repairs from escaped dinosaurs, lawsuits from Eden visitors, and the salaries of highly trained dino wranglers. That family vacation to see the T-Rex might cost more than your mortgage. Agriculture would face unprecedented challenges. Crops that took centuries to domesticate would become dino snacks overnight. Farmers would need to build fortresses around their fields, complete with moats and guard towers. Livestock, forget about it. Your free-range chickens would be the first course in a raptor buffet. The organic movement would take on new meaning when dinosaur-free becomes a premium label on your groceries. The meat industry would collapse or transform entirely. Why bother raising cattle when you can hunt Triceratops? Butcher shops would need chainsaws instead of cleavers. Your local steakhouse might offer T-Rex ribs as the daily special, though good luck finding a plate big enough. And vegetarians would face an existential crisis. Is eating a brontosaurus steak still considered meat if the creature went extinct millions of years ago? Real estate markets would fluctuate wildly based on dinosaur migration patterns. That beachfront property you've always wanted. Now it's prime pterodactyl nesting territory. Suburban neighborhoods would be abandoned if a pack of raptors decided they liked the local schools. And good luck selling your house after a stegosaurus used it as a scratching post. The term, fixer-upper, would take on terrifying new dimensions. The job market would see entirely new professions emerge. Dino whisperers, raptor wranglers, and Triceratops trainers would be in high demand. Universities would offer advanced degrees in prehistoric animal husbandry. That guidance counselor who told you to study computer science. Now they're recommending you specialize in pterodactyl air traffic control. The entertainment industry would both boom and face unique challenges. Nature documentaries would become extreme sports films. Reality shows would follow dino wranglers on their daily rounds. But movie productions would need to shoot on soundstages, Filming on location would be too risky when there's a chance your lead actor might become lunch. Sports would either become much more exciting or disappear entirely. Baseball games would need retractable domes to protect against flying reptiles. Football players would demand hazard pay for dodging velociraptors on the field. And golf. Forget about it. Those sand traps would be perfect nests for baby raptors. The legal profession would thrive on dinosaur-related cases. Personal injury lawyers would specialize in eaten by T-Rex claims. Environmental lawyers would argue over dinosaur habitats. And divorce attorneys would add custody of the pet Compsognathus to their list of services. Law schools would offer courses in prehistoric animal law. Finally, the insurance industry would need to completely reinvent itself. Life insurance policies would have exclusions for death by dinosaur. Homeowners insurance would require dino-proof fortifications. And car insurance. Good luck getting coverage when your daily commute involves navigating herds of apatosaurs. The economic upheaval would be unprecedented, proving that sometimes, some things are better left extinct. Now let's delve into the social chaos that living dinosaurs would unleash. Imagine trying to maintain any semblance of normalcy when your morning jog could be interrupted by a sprinting velociraptor. Daily routines would become survival missions. That coffee shop on the corner. Now it's a fortified bunker where you sip your latte while keeping one eye on the door for any stray carnivores. The phrase, "watch your step," would take on literal meaning when sidewalks could be covered in dino droppings the size of small cars. Social media would explode with dinosaur content. Your feed would be flooded with viral videos of T-Rex chases, pterodactyl sightings, and the occasional Karen versus raptor confrontation. Influencers would risk their lives for the perfect prehistoric selfie. That friend who always posts about their perfect life. Now they're showing off their new pet Compsognathus and its adorable habit of chewing through furniture. Dating would become a minefield of prehistoric proportions. Online profiles would need new categories. Prefers herbivores, or looking for someone who can outrun a raptor. First dates would involve choosing locations with good escape routes. And that awkward moment when you meet the parents. Now it's compounded by the fact that their backyard is a nesting ground for pterodons. The phrase, "till death do us part," would need revision when your spouse might be eaten by a carnivore. Family dynamics would shift dramatically. Parents would need to teach their kids not just about stranger danger, but also about dino danger. Bedtime stories would feature brave knights fighting off packs of raptors instead of dragons. That family pet, now it's a miniature stegosaurus that your kids insist is just like a puppy, but spikier. And good luck explaining to your teenager why they can't have a T-Rex for their sweet 16. Education systems would need complete overhauls. Schools would add dino drills to their safety protocols alongside fire and earthquake drills. Science classes would have the unique advantage of live specimens, though field trips would require military-grade security. That history lesson about the Jurassic period, now it's a hands-on experience that might involve running from a hungry Allosaurus. Workplaces would face unprecedented challenges. Commuting would become an extreme sport. Office buildings would need reinforced structures and emergency dino shelters. That coworker who always steals your lunch. Now they're competing with a pack of Compsognathus for the last sandwich in the fridge. And good luck explaining to your boss why you're late because a Triceratops blocked the highway. Public services would struggle to keep up. Police forces would need to train in dino wrangling. Fire departments would deal with the unique challenge of rescuing people from T-Rex jaws. And hospitals, they'd need specialized units for dino-related injuries, from Triceratops goring to pterodactyl pecking. The phrase, emergency response, would take on new urgency. Finally, social norms would shift in unpredictable ways. Fashion would adapt to include dino-proof clothing. Language would evolve to include new terms like dino dodging and raptor rage. And that friendly neighborhood barbecue. Now it's a tense affair where everyone keeps one eye on the grill and the other on the horizon for any approaching predators. The social fabric would be stretched to its limits, proving that coexistence with dinosaurs would be anything but simple. The environmental impact of reintroducing dinosaurs would make climate change look like a minor hiccup. Picture this. Ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years suddenly having to accommodate creatures that haven't walked the Earth in 65 million years. The delicate balance of flora and fauna would be thrown into chaos. That beautiful forest you love hiking in. Now it's a battleground where modern mammals compete with prehistoric giants for resources. The term, invasive species, would take on a whole new meaning when the invader is a pack of velociraptors. Water systems would be particularly affected. Rivers and lakes would need to support the drinking habits of creatures that consume water by the tanker load. That pristine lake you enjoy fishing in. Now it's a watering hole for herds of thirsty sauropods. And good luck maintaining water quality when every dip in the lake by a brontosaurus stirs up enough sediment to turn the water into mud. Air quality would also take a hit. The sheer size and number of dinosaurs would mean more methane emissions than all the cows in the world combined. That fresh mountain air you love. Now it's tinged with the unmistakable scent of dino dung. And let's not forget the pterodactyls. Their droppings would rain down from the sky, turning every outdoor event into a hazardous affair. Plant life would face unprecedented challenges. Dinosaurs had a voracious appetite for vegetation, and modern plants haven't evolved to withstand such heavy grazing. That community garden you're so proud of. Now it's a buffet for a hungry triceratops. And good luck growing crops when every field is at risk of being trampled by a herd of apatosaurs. Wildlife would be forced to adapt or perish. Modern predators like lions and tigers would find themselves outmatched by the likes of T-Rexes and allosaurs. That delicate ecosystem of birds, insects, and small mammals. Now it's a high-stakes game of survival where the odds are stacked against the modern creatures. The term, food chain, would need to be rewritten to include a new apex predator. Even the soil would be affected. The constant movement of heavy dinosaurs would compact the earth, making it difficult for plants to grow. That fertile farmland you rely on for food. Now it's a barren wasteland trampled by herds of stegosaurs. And good luck maintaining soil health when every inch of ground is churned up by dino feet. Climate change would be exacerbated by the presence of dinosaurs. The increased methane emissions, the destruction of plant life, and the disruption of ecosystems would all contribute to a warmer planet. That global warming you're worried about. Now it's accelerated by the return of creatures that haven't walked the earth since the Cretaceous period. Finally, the concept of conservation would need to be rethought. How do you protect endangered species when their biggest threat is a creature that hasn't existed for millions of years? That wildlife sanctuary you support. Now it's a battleground where modern animals fight for survival against prehistoric predators. The environmental impact would be profound, proving that sometimes, the past should stay in the past. The military-industrial complex would undergo its most radical transformation since the invention of gunpowder. Imagine defense departments worldwide scrambling to develop anti-dinosaur weaponry while arms manufacturers pivot from tanks to T-Rex tranquilizer systems. That nuclear deterrent your country spent billions developing. Useless against a swarm of pterodactyls attacking major cities. The Pentagon would need entirely new branches dedicated to prehistoric threat assessment and dino-based warfare strategies. Law enforcement would face challenges making modern policing look quaint. Standard-issue handguns would be about as effective against a charging ceratosaurus as throwing pebbles. Riot gear would need upgrading to withstand bites from creatures with jaw strength measured in tons. That police academy training course now includes mandatory velociraptor takedown techniques and how to administer first aid for Allosaurus maulings. Border security would become exponentially more complicated. Forget about building walls. No structure could contain determined dinosaurs. Thermal cameras designed to spot human migrants would be useless against cold-blooded reptiles. That Coast Guard patrol boat. Now it's on constant alert for aquatic dinosaurs breaching territorial waters. Immigration debates would take on new dimensions when the undocumented entrants weigh 20 tons and eat trees for breakfast. Prison systems would face unprecedented security challenges. Maximum security facilities would need to be re-engineered to prevent dinosaur-assisted breakouts. That death row inmate. Now he's volunteering for experimental raptor handling duty. Gang violence inside prisons would be overshadowed by the new hierarchy based on who can tame the prison's resident Compsognathus pack. The justice system would need complete restructuring. Courtrooms would require dinosaur-proof docks for accused criminals. Jury selection would screen for candidates who can remain calm during unexpected T-Rex appearances. That bail system now includes risk assessments for whether the defendant might use their pet pterodactyl to flee the country. Military strategy would revert to medieval tactics against some threats. Cavalry units might make a comeback when armored vehicles prove too slow against certain dinosaurs. Air forces would need to develop new dogfighting techniques against flying reptiles. That drone program, now it's focused on monitoring dino migration patterns that could impact national security. Intelligence agencies would face new priorities. Satellite imagery would be repurposed to track dinosaur herd movements. Cybersecurity would take a backseat to physical security against prehistoric threats. That CIA analyst now spends their days predicting which unstable regime might try weaponizing raptors first. The arms race would take a bizarre prehistoric turn. Countries would compete to develop the most effective dino deterrent systems while secretly breeding their own combat dinosaurs. That nuclear nonproliferation treaty, now it's accompanied by an international ban on weaponized stegosaurus breeding programs. The balance of power would shift to whichever nation first figures out how to mount missile launchers on Triceratops. Private security would become the fastest growing industry. Bodyguards would need training in both human threats and prehistoric predators. That neighborhood watch program now includes patrols armed with high-powered tranquilizer rifles. Home security systems would evolve to detect both burglars and small carnivorous dinosaurs. The very nature of warfare would change when both sides have access to genetically modified battle dinosaurs. Conventional weapons would become secondary to biological supremacy. That military parade now features battalions of armored ankylosaurs instead of tanks. The phrase, arms control, would never mean the same thing again in this terrifying new world where the ultimate weapons come straight from the Mesozoic era. The entertainment industry would both boom and face existential challenges in this dino-dominated world. Imagine Hollywood trying to produce dinosaur movies when actual dinosaurs are roaming the streets. That blockbuster Jurassic Park reboot, now it's a documentary series following real-life dino wranglers. CGI artists would need to find new jobs when audiences can see the real thing in their backyards. The term, reality TV, would take on literal meaning when shows feature contestants trying to survive in dinosaur-infested wilderness. Music festivals would need complete overhauls. That outdoor stage you love, now it's surrounded by electric fences and armed guards. Sound systems would need to be dino-proof, and performers would have to contend with pterodactyls swooping through the crowd. The phrase, mosh pit, would become terrifyingly literal when a pack of raptors joins in. The gaming industry would shift dramatically. Virtual reality games would pale in comparison to real-life dino encounters. That popular survival game, now it's a training simulator for actual dinosaur survival techniques. Esports tournaments would need to include contingency plans for unexpected dino interruptions. The phrase, game over, would take on new urgency when it's shouted during a real T-Rex attack. Literature would face creative challenges. That best-selling dinosaur novel, now it's just another day in the life for readers. Authors would need to find new ways to make prehistoric creatures exciting when they're as common as squirrels. The term, science fiction, would need redefining when the science is now reality. The art world would undergo a renaissance of sorts. Painters would have live dinosaur models instead of still life setups. Sculptors would need to work on a much larger scale to capture the majesty of sauropods. That modern art installation, now it's a real Triceratops in a gallery, and no one can decide if it's art or just a very confused dinosaur. Sports would either become much more exciting or disappear entirely. That football stadium, now it's a coliseum where teams compete while dodging velociraptors. Baseball games would need retractable domes to protect against flying reptiles. Golf courses would become dinosaur grazing grounds, and good luck finding your ball in a field of Compsognathus. The fashion industry would need to adapt quickly. Designers would create dino-proof clothing lines, complete with reinforced materials and camouflage patterns. That trendy boutique, now it's a survival gear shop where the latest fashion is also functional. The term, haute couture, would mean something entirely different when it includes raptor-resistant fabrics. Theater and live performances would face unique challenges. That Broadway musical, now it's an immersive experience where the audience might need to run from a T-Rex during intermission. Shakespeare in the Park would take on new meaning when the park is also home to a herd of stegosaurs. The phrase, break a leg, would be taken very seriously when there's a real risk of dinosaur-related injuries. Finally, the very concept of entertainment would shift in unpredictable ways. People would seek out new thrills when dinosaurs become mundane. That quiet night at the movies. Now it's an extreme sport where you might need to outrun a carnivore on the way home. The entertainment industry would need to constantly innovate to keep audiences engaged in a world where reality is stranger than fiction. The psychological impact of living alongside dinosaurs would reshape human consciousness in ways we can scarcely imagine. That mild anxiety you feel when a large dog barks at you. Now multiply it by a factor of T-Rex and you've got the baseline mental state of every citizen. Psychiatrists would need to add new diagnostic categories like post-dinosaur stress disorder and chronic raptor anxiety. The phrase, "just relax," would become the most tone-deaf advice in history when there's a legitimate chance of being eaten on your morning commute. Childhood development would take bizarre turns. Kids who grew up in this world would view dinosaurs with the same nonchalance earlier generations reserved for pigeons. That classic childhood fear of monsters under the bed, now it's statistically justified when compsognathus love hiding in dark spaces. Bedtime stories would evolve from fairy tales to survival guides, with titles like Goodnight Raptor and Where the Wild Things Actually Are. Social interactions would be permanently altered. Small talk would inevitably circle back to dinosaur encounters. That awkward silence on a first date, now filled with comparing scars from near misses with pterodactyls. Office watercooler conversations would revolve around whose neighborhood had the latest Stegosaurus incursion. The phrase, "you won't believe what happened to me," would almost always involve some prehistoric predator. The human concept of danger would be completely recalibrated. That roller coaster you used to think was thrilling, now it's a quaint relic from a simpler time. Extreme sports enthusiasts would need to find new challenges when base jumping gets overshadowed by T-Rex dodging. The adrenaline rush from watching horror movies would pale in comparison to the real-life terror of hearing that distinctive thud of approaching dino footsteps. Urban design would mess with our minds in subtle ways. That beautiful park bench under a shady tree, now it's a potential death trap when the trees might conceal predators. Sidewalk cafes would install panic buttons alongside the salt shakers. The soothing sound of birds chirping would be replaced by the constant vigilance for warning screeches of approaching raptors. Our relationship with pets would become complicated. That friendly golden retriever now seems laughably harmless compared to your neighbor's domesticated velociraptor. Cat people would smugly point out how felines at least evolved alongside prehistoric threats. The pet food industry would need to address the awkward reality that some pets might view smaller pets as snacks. Sleep patterns would be permanently disrupted. That white noise machine you used to drown out city sounds, now it's useless against the nocturnal calls of hunting dinosaurs. People would develop a sixth sense for danger, sleeping lightly and waking at the slightest tremor that might signal approaching footsteps. The concept of sleeping like a baby would disappear when babies instinctively know to wake and cry at the first scent of carnivore. Even our language would change to reflect the new reality. Common phrases would take on literal meanings. "Watch your back" would be practical advice rather than a metaphor. The word, "pray," would lose its abstract quality. That casual, "see you later," would feel strangely ominous when later isn't guaranteed in a world with apex predators around every corner. Ultimately, the human psyche would either adapt or break under the constant low-grade terror. Some would become hyper-vigilant survivalists, while others might develop a fatalistic acceptance of their place in the food chain. The most profound change might be the collective realization that we're no longer at the top of that chain, a humbling thought that would echo through every aspect of human culture and consciousness. The political landscape would undergo seismic shifts in a world where dinosaurs roam free. That local city council meeting about potholes, now it's a heated debate about who's responsible for the triceratops that's been blocking Main Street for 3 days. Mayors would need to balance budgets that include dinosaur wrangler salaries and dino-proof infrastructure. The phrase, "public safety," would take on new meaning when it includes protection from prehistoric predators. National governments would face unprecedented challenges. Defense budgets would need to allocate funds for anti-dinosaur military units. That border wall debate, now it's about keeping out both illegal immigrants and migratory packs of raptors. Immigration policies would need to address the tricky question of whether a Stegosaurus crossing the border counts as an undocumented alien. International relations would become infinitely more complex. That United Nations Assembly, now it's a forum for negotiating dinosaur migration treaties and preventing rogue states from weaponizing velociraptors. Diplomatic summits would need to include paleontologists alongside traditional advisors. The term, arms control, would expand to include bans on genetically modified combat dinosaurs. Political campaigns would need to adapt their messaging. That candidate promising to fix healthcare. Now they need a plan for dinosaur-related injuries too. Campaign rallies would require dino-proof venues and armed security details. The phrase, grassroots movement, would be taken literally when volunteers need to navigate herds of grazing sauropods. Policy making would need to address entirely new categories of issues. That environmental protection bill, now it includes provisions for dinosaur habitats and migration corridors. Education reform would need to incorporate dino safety into school curricula. The term, Infrastructure Week, would mean something entirely different when it involves building bridges strong enough to support a brontosaurus. Political scandals would take on bizarre new dimensions. That politician caught in an affair, now it's overshadowed by the congressman who tried to smuggle a baby T-Rex into his district. Lobbying efforts would expand to include dinosaur-related industries, from dino-proof construction to raptor tranquilizer manufacturing. The phrase, political animal, would have literal implications. Political ideologies would evolve to address the new reality. Libertarians would face tough questions about personal responsibility when it comes to pet dinosaurs. Socialists would need to explain how to equitably distribute the costs of dino-proofing cities. The term, conservative, would take on new meaning when applied to policies about preserving the status quo against prehistoric disruptions. Even the concept of political power would change. That military parade showcasing tanks and missiles, now it features armored ankylosaurs and T-Rex cavalry units. The balance of power would shift to nations that control the most formidable dinosaur armies. The phrase, power to the people, would need redefining when the people are competing with dinosaurs for dominance. Political satire would reach new heights. That late-night comedy show, now it's full of jokes about the president's awkward encounter with a pterodactyl. Political cartoons would feature caricatures of politicians riding dinosaurs instead of elephants or donkeys. The term, political theater, would mean something entirely different when it involves actual performances in dino-proof venues. Ultimately, the political system would need to adapt to a world where dinosaurs are a daily reality. The challenges would be immense, but so would the opportunities for innovative leadership and creative problem-solving. The politicians who thrive in this new world would be those who can navigate the complexities of both human and prehistoric politics, proving that even in a world of dinosaurs, politics remains the ultimate survival game. After exploring this wild thought experiment, one thing becomes painfully clear: humanity was never meant to share the planet with creatures that view us as either obstacles or appetizers. The romantic idea of walking with dinosaurs quickly crumbles under the weight of practical realities, like trying to parallel park while avoiding a territorial stegosaurus. Our modern world, built on fragile systems and delicate social contracts, would collapse under the stomping feet of prehistoric giants. Perhaps some scientific marvels should remain in the realm of fiction, where they can thrill us safely from behind a movie screen. But this raises bigger questions about our obsession with playing God with nature. If we could bring back dinosaurs, should we? Where do we draw the line between scientific achievement and ecological responsibility? The story of Jurassic Park serves as both a warning and a mirror, showing us that our greatest threat isn't the dinosaurs we might create, but the unchecked ambition and greed that would drive us to create them in the first place. If you enjoyed this journey into a world where science fiction becomes science fact, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you visit a real Jurassic Park, or do you value your limbs too much? Make sure to subscribe to What If Horizons for more mind-bending explorations of possibilities at the edge of reality. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, especially when we inevitably do the follow-up, What If Someone Actually Builds Jurassic Park? Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and your escape routes planned.